problem we're faced with is we have all this data, and but we need an application that we can allow our users to see it. And with internal application development costs and development times being so high, we can never get all the applications we need to let our users see the data they need to see. The solution is to use a RAD tool. Build the application yourself, and you already know enough to do that. RAD is short for Rapid Application Development. I'm sure most of you have heard of that, but just in case you haven't, we're going to talk about that. It's an application that allows you to build a prototype in very short time. You can generate prototypes straight from your schema of your database. You can select the pages and tables you want, and you can develop in iterations so you can add pieces as you need them. And we're going to introduce you to the premier RAD tool for web applications, IronSpeed Designer. IronSpeed Designer builds web applications straight from your database. We already have a database that we're going to be using for today's demonstration. It's an order management database called Southwind. It's included in the installation folder for IronSpeed Designer. I presume many of you have already downloaded IronSpeed Designer. It doesn't cost you anything except the time to start it. And you can get it on our website. Go to the home page of our website and get it if you haven't already. In that in that installation, when you get it installed, you'll see that there is an installation folder. Let me find the installation folder for IronSpeed Designer, which is in Program Files, IronSpeed, and this is version 11.1. There is Sample Databases folder. The Sample Databases folder contains the database that we're going to be using. This is the example of it right here. And so we're going to use IronSpeed Designer to create an application from that database. And we'll do it before the end of this webinar. Some of the considerations you should worry about in the database are naming conventions. Because IronSpeed Designer builds your application from your database, it's important to use meaningful names so that your application will have meaningful names. You can use camel case in the names, and IronSpeed Designer will parse the names for you and try and be consistent with your singular and plural. You also want to pay attention to field data types in your database so that the field types represent the data they are actually supposed to represent. For example, just an example, use a currency type if you're actually representing currency instead of just decimal or binary. I'm sure you've heard these before, but it's important with IronSpeed Designer to reinforce them because IronSpeed Designer does work directly from your database. Now we'll actually start our demo. We'll build an application from our sample database with the IronSpeed Designer application wizard, and then we'll begin the configuration process, some minor configuration to customize it for exactly what we need. We'll change the menus and show you how easy it is to change the starting page or anything else in the application. And then we'll take questions. Remember, questions are an important part of this webinar. I expect to answer your questions and direct the content of the webinar to the things that you need to know about IronSpeed Designer. So if you've got the questions, get them into Jill. Now let's start with IronSpeed Designer version 11.1. You'll notice it needs administrative permissions on the local machine in order to run. Once it starts, we're going to be using a trial key, which I've already activated it with. And you can get your free trial key when you download from our website, so you can have one too. And we start with build an application now. This will bring up the application wizard. We'll go past the start page and go to the first page where we select the page style for our application. There are two families of page style. There are modern and classic. Each of them has a large number of styles. Classic has been around for a large number of years, and there are thousands and thousands of applications with different classic styles out there in use in companies and on the internet. So you can use that, or you can go to a more modern style, some of the buttons a little more hidden, looks a little cleaner. But whichever you pick, when you pick one of the styles, once you pick it and create your application, you can change to other styles within that family, but you cannot change to the opposite, to the classic style from modern or to modern from classic. We'll pick a Chablis, a nice simple style, and go on to the next step, which is the databases step. Here we'll use the sample databases. You can also use any of the databases that you have, which are Microsoft Access, SQL Azure, SQL Server, Server's Compact Edition, or MySQL or Oracle. We're going to be sticking with our sample database for the demo today. And in that, we'll start with deciding which tables and or views to select for the application. We can select any we need. We're going to build from a core set, which consists of a categories table. And with that, we're going to have an add record page, an edit record page, a basic table page for viewing the whole table, a show record page, and a couple of mobile pages. One of the really nice things about IronSpeed Designer is that it builds separate mobile pages that are served to your mobile devices when they connect to your database, and so you can provide pages that are designed for mobile devices in your application. Now, with the categories, there are pictures in that database that describe the categories, and so we're going to use a gallery page also, since the gallery page is very nice with pictures and gives you good presentation. We're also going to, in the products, we're going to use a gallery page in the products, so I'll add one there, and we're going to use one in the sales reps, which also have pictures. Also, I'm going to be adding the order details, but the order details table won't have any gallery in it because there are no pictures in it. There's a set of pages that we'll be using, and with that we can go on to the next step and have it ask about virtual primary keys and virtual foreign keys. IronSpeed Designer allows you to create virtual foreign keys or primary keys in any of your tables or views. If they don't have them already, we urge you to put them in your database, but if you don't have them in the database, then you can add them here. It allows you to look up the primary keys, allows you to look up individual records in the table or view, and the foreign keys, of course, provide the links that relate one table or view to another. If you declare them as virtual keys, then you won't have to make any changes to the database, and nobody outside of your application will be affected. Okay, with that, let's go on to the next step, which is localization step. For all you people with multinational operations, you can build websites that are localized and provide language labels for any of the languages you provide for your application. As an example, we can add Dutch today to add another one to our application. Then we'll go on to the next step, the final step, which is the application step, where we create the application. Pick a name for it. This is the internal name of the application, one you should be comfortable with, because once the application is created, the name will be permanent. You can't change it without recreating the application. And pick where you want to put it. I have a testing folder for that, and that's where we'll keep it. Then what type of application you want. This is a simple application, so we'll use a website. We don't need a web application. You can also build web applications for Sharepoint, either 2007 or 2010. Then we'll pick the code behind language we want to work in. One of the nice things about IronSpeed Designer is you very seldom have to go into the code behind language, but you can. We're building just a standard .NET website. We'll have standard code behind pages, and you can provide all the code customization you want. So use the code language you're familiar with or most comfortable with. We'll use Visual Basic because that's what we use here with IronSpeed Designer. And which .NET framework your server will be running and you want to run your application in. For us, that's the 3.5 framework. We could also use any of the others. And which Visual Studio you want to use to edit your application with if you're going to use Visual Studio. With the 3.5 framework, we'll use Visual Studio 2008. You can choose whether you have SQL statements, database access via SQL statement generation in line or in stored procedures. And with that, we're ready to go next. See that we're ready to finish the application. We'll click Finish, and with that, IronSpeed Designer will start by going through the schema of the database, which it's already done in a preliminary way to show us the tables and views that we could create pages against. It will create the data access layer for the application, and then prepare the pages and run our application. And our application will run here on the local server using the Microsoft ASP.NET Development Server, which is used also in Visual Studio. It's a great tool for viewing local ASP applications without having to worry about the configuration of IIS. You can also choose to run your applications in development mode in IIS, but I find it's handiest to use Development Server and then try IIS just before we get ready to deploy it. Now we have the application created. Underneath here you can see we have the Application Explorer of IronSpeed and the IronSpeed application, and coming up in the browser is our application. It takes a little while to start up because a website is compiled on the fly, and so the development server compiled the pages first before it showed them. Now it's there, and you'll see we have a complete application giving you access to all the tables we asked for, where we can go to a table. We want to look at orders. We can show orders. We can show all the orders in a page table, or we can add an order, or we can also edit an order or delete an order. And so you now have complete access to your data. What we're missing, of course, is security. Once you start giving people access to your database, you want to make sure that the security is set, and we'll talk about security in a few minutes. You'll notice also that the application we created allows us to select any of the languages we actually selected for it. So we could look at it in Dutch. Now with Dutch, it translates the fixed text of the application into Dutch. It does not do active translation of translating text out of your database. That stays the way it was. But and so all these names which come from the database will stay the same as they are. But any of the fixed text in the application will be now used in Dutch. And with that, I think we'll put it back to English because I don't read Dutch very well. All these applications I've created with Dutch, and I still don't read it very well. All right. Go back to our slides and take a look at the questions, because I see we have a good attendance this morning, and we're going to be spending a little bit of time on questions. Can I have two starting pages in the same project based on sign-in user? Actually, you can have as many pages as you want, and if you have a way to select what page continues to where you're redirected to, you'll have to put in redirect code. That's customization. We don't provide a standard way to do that, but you certainly can. Remember what IronSpeed Designer has prepared for you, and let's just take a brief look at it. Here's IronSpeed Designer. We have a standard .NET web application. Let's use Visual Studio. We'll go to look at it in Visual Studio. And the same application in Visual Studio It's my app 5, and come on, Visual Studio, I know you're going to start up. There it goes. And we have a web application, or a website that we can go to and program just like any other website. We have code behind pages. We have the ASPX pages. We have the ASPX code behind pages, and so forth. And we can go to any of those parts and use them in Visual Studio. Right now, I don't want to do that, but I just wanted to reinforce the fact that you've got a standard .NET web application. You can do anything in it that you do in any other web application. Of course, some of the things you can do will make it incompatible with further use of IronSpeed Designer, so if you're worried about that, you have to worry about it. But other than that, you'll find that IronSpeed Designer and Visual Studio work very well together. Is Designer actually a Microsoft Access app? It's not an Access app because it is not. It does not contain a database except a couple of small Microsoft CE database for testing. It is a Windows Form application built in Visual Basic. The database I have is more cryptic but meaningful to me. Is there any easy way to use an alias name or globally change the table name for tables in a page? That's a good question, Andrew. I'm going to have to look at that more. I don't know of any easy way to do that. You can, of course, change names that present themselves, and you can do it in each individual page. There are also, in the database tab, you can go to the database and provide a table name alias here. Does that allow me to do it? No, it doesn't. So I don't know of any easy way to globally change names through an alias that will help you in changing the names of your database. Probably the easiest way is to change the names in the database, which you probably don't want to do. So, but you can change names in each of the pages, and it's no harder than actually doing that in a real application. What stored procedures are generated? Well, we can't see stored procedures here, but if you have an application, you have a test database. When you generate your application, it will generate the stored procedures. You can see the stored procedures here. There are stored procedures for reading a record, writing a record, et cetera, et cetera. You'll see all of them, and you can go look. Of course, we can't see them here because Access doesn't support stored procedures, so we couldn't generate any anyway. Will there be a Sharepoint 2013 option for app publishing? If so, what is the estimated time frame? And what is the latest Visual Studio version that IronSpeed Designer supports? We don't have Sharepoint 2013 yet. We're working on it, but it's not clear when it will be available. I know it will not be available in our next release, which it will be out, that's 11.2, which will be out very shortly this month or next month. Visual Studio, we support Visual Studio 2013. On a similar topic, will there be an option to publish the app on SharePoint Online or Standalone? I haven't interfaced with SharePoint Online or Office Online, but I would imagine that if you have an application that's a SharePoint application, then you can use that application online too. But that depends on the online applications from Microsoft, and we haven't done that. Is Designer actually a Microsoft Access app? No, I answered that. Can you start two starting pages in the same project? Those are ones I looked at. So this is one I looked at. This is one I looked at. Make sure I get all of your questions. Stored procedures, the database. Okay, that's it for right now. There'll be a couple other question periods, but thanks for the questions. Those are really good questions, and I'm actually going to have to look at a few when I get through. The table naming aliases has always been a common question and there isn't any really convenient way to just globally swap names. That's why naming is so important. We mention it as being so important. Anyway, let's go back to our application, our slides, and continue from here because I want to demonstrate just the kinds of customization. As I said, it's a full .NET compatible application, so you can technically use Visual Studio or a text editor and do anything you want to the application, but there are some things that are that you'll want to do that are very easy to do with IronSpeed Designer, so we're just going to mention them. Like in changing the application logo and footer, change page layout, change logic in the application, code logic without programming and coding. You can change data sources and filtering. You can change the CSS styles that are highly customizable that define the page styles that you're using. Every page style has its own CSS style, and so you can get at customizing that very easily. You can change pagination controls and change the way you page through your records. You can add controls, a whole set of controls, .NET controls, to your pages using a very handy toolbox. Right now, we're going to look at the first three of those as things that do to our application, just to give you a feel for what we can do with the application. We'll change the application logo because it would look silly with just a generic application logo. Then we'll change some page layout, show you how easy it is to rearrange a page, and you can navigate to any part of your page because the pages in IronSpeed Designer are arranged as a grid. I don't know if you caught that. Here's one part of a page, but the whole page is a whole hierarchy of grids consisting of the controls and the contents, and you can navigate to any part of your page using the page drop-down hierarchy, and we'll do that and show you how easy it is to get to all parts of your page that you want to customize. And we'll show you just a simple example of how you change logic without coding. We're going to change it so that all of the password fields in our database are encrypted. Right now in the sample database, they aren't encrypted, but we'll change this application so whenever a password is used, it will be encrypted when it's written, when a new one is written back into the database. And let's take a look at those things, and we'll take some more questions at the end of that section. Here we go. Here's my application. Well, the first thing we want to do is go back to our layout editor because we want to look at the menus of our example. We have the menus. We have a menu panel where we can right-click on the menus, configure the menu. You recall, let's see if I have it up here. You recall this order of the menus. I didn't really want to see this. I want to see the sales rep first. I want to concentrate on my sales reps and arrange this in a more logical order. And I also wanted to go to the gallery page as the start page of my application because I like the way this looks better and gives us better presentation. So we'll do that now by going to our menus, rearranging the menus by bringing up the sales reps to the front of the menu. We'll put the categories down after the products, and we'll put the orders in front of the order details. Oops, what happened to my categories? Categories belongs down below products, and it didn't stick there. Come on, okay, guys. There. And that's it. We rearrange our menu, and with the sales reps being the start page, I'll want to change my start page, which is right now the show categories table page. I don't want to use that one, so we'll go down to my sales rep pages. You'll notice there are folders for each of the tables or views that we are creating pages for, plus a number of standard folders, which are the boilerplate common pieces of your application. A shared folder is very interesting, and where you'll find the pagination controls if you want to customize those. The sales rep has a gallery page, and all we do is select that, right-click on it, and say Set as Web Start Page, and then we'll start with that. So now when we run our application, when it first starts, when our customer goes to our website where we have this deployed, we'll get the page we want with the order of the menus we want. We also need a much better logo for the menu, so let's go back here, go to our header and footer section, the standard header and footer sections, and go to the header control, which is used on all pages. We have a logo in that. The logo right now is that your company name logo. Well, we'll change that, and all we're going to have to do that is put a different image name in here, because we're going to go to our application. Let's take a look at our application. To do that, we'll find it in my testing folder. Remember, that's where I put it, in my version 11.1 files, and we're doing my app 5. My app 5 is our application. This is what we're working on. In there, there's an images folder. So to work with that, let me get another folder for our Windows Explorer, because I want to go to our corporate website, which I have a copy of here. In my corporate website, I know I have exactly, in the images folder, I have an IronSpeed image, I'm sure, which will do a much better header for us. So we'll just copy that and paste it down into our images folder for our application. And while we're there, I'll just highlight that title because I'm going to copy it, and then use the image name, for our logo, and so now we'll have a meaningful logo. We also want to, let me go back and show you, we're going to change the page layout, and then we're going to change logic without coding. So let's go back to here, the page layout. We have a product set of pages in the products page, and let's just go look at that in our application. We can go to look at products, and we can look at the products gallery. If we look at the products gallery, we'll find that we can choose any product and show that product. This is a page which shows the contents of the product and gives us a chance to edit it. It's got a lot of space here. We could make another set of columns, and we could also take away the child table, which I don't really want and just sort of gets in the way from my point of view. So let's do that and show you how we can accomplish that. We'll go to our application, choose the Show Products page, and here we're looking at the page that we just saw in our live application. It's a page which, in the page drop-down, you can see consists of a master page, the page itself, and then the record control, and then the child table control. So let's go to the page itself and just remove that row that contains the tab container, because I don't want it in this page. Remove row, and now we'll have a much simpler page to start. Once we do that, we'll go back to the fields of the page and decide that we can move some of these over to another column over here. We'll do that by moving these three over to there. It's easy. You select one field, you then hold down the Shift key, you can select the whole group, move it over, and do the same thing here and here, and now we have a page which uses the space a little better. Once we want to preview that, so we can preview any page we're working on and see just an example of that page to see that the kinds of layout changes we've made are what we want to do. And so there, I like that a lot better. And so you can see how easy it is to change. Now, we talked about changing code. We have a feature called formulas in IronSpeed Designer. There are formulas. Let me go back to the layout editor. There are formulas that control the number of things about any of the fields and controls. here's a text box, or literal control, and it shows you where it gets the value from. You can change that. You can make it show anything you want. All these things are controlled by formulas. In particular, in our database layer, in our sales reps, which contains the password field I'm worried about, we have a password, and it's called a validation type password. Well, a validation type password means that IronSpeed will take special precautions in showing it, etc. We wanted to make this a standard field, a standard text box. So the first thing I'll do is get my window a little shorter so it's not blocked, and go over here and change it to a standard string field. There we go. Once I do that and treat it as a string, I can go to the field itself and initialize it. Right now, it would, here we are. When reading a record, I want to initialize it with a formula that says that I want to encrypt. So in my security section, I'll find encrypt data. Whoops. When reading it, I want to decrypt it. And here we'll use the password field from the database. And when inserting it into the database, I want to make sure that it is encrypted. So we'll go back to the security section and encrypt our data when it goes into the database. And what data we want to encrypt is easy. It's the password field. And this same formula is also good, so I'll just copy it and use the same formula in updating a record. And now our database will treat the fields as encrypt the fields that go in and decrypt them when they come out so you can edit them. You can be more strict in your password handling if you want and not allow decrypting coming out, never do anything but encrypt and then match with the encrypted value, and only allow new passwords, not changing old ones. But that's up to you. This is just to show you how easy it is to change the values that are included in your application. We didn't have to do any coding. You could also go into your code behind files and do the same thing, but then you'd have to find them and edit them in Visual Studio and everything else. Okay, that's pretty much it. We can go to our application, and let's take a look at some of the questions. There's a few more questions here. Can you use SQL Server Analysis Service Cube? You can use you can't use it in IronSpeed Designer. IronSpeed Designer doesn't understand it. That doesn't mean you can't use it in your SQL Server database. It's just that it won't have any effect on your IronSpeed Designer application. We don't build applications using a service cube. The checkbox for mobile, does that allow for different UI for iOS, Android, Windows Phone, or just resizing? That's it's a different UI if you'll look at it. Actually, let's go take a look. Here's our application. We want to look at our application. We have the Show Products page, which we just dealt with, and we can preview that, and we see the page that we were looking at for Show Products. Now, this is for a standard web browser on a computer. What we want to do is look at the gallery page, or not the gallery, the mobile page. And so as soon as this thing gets through refreshing here, we'll take a look at the mobile example of that page. And you'll see that what you see is here on a mobile device. You see just the products, the category, product name, etc., the contents of the product record. And so it's much different. It's prepared for the device. It isn't prepared differently for different mobile devices. You get the same mobile page, whether it's iOS or Android or Windows Phone. How is business rule handle control state? I enable or disable or hide or show. You can selectively hide or show things by customizing your pages. You can set properties for pages where things are shown. If you want to do it selectively based on a selection of what's on the page or what you see in your environment, then you'll have to provide customization for that. Is there a report engine to PDF and emailing the PDF? Yes, we allow you to prepare PDF pages. Let's go to my Show Products page, back to the Layout Editor. One of the things you can do is, let's actually just go to the application here and take a look at Actions. And you'll see here we have, what is this? This is Show. We don't have it, I don't have it listed on here, but yes, you can add PDF reports. There you can get a PDF report button, and so you can get a PDF. That's why, because, where's my products? If I show the products and I go to the Actions, I want to show my products, there is a PDF report button. And so you can use that. You can use it as it comes. You can also then customize your application to email it. We do provide email support, and so you can email pages. Can we use parameters to filter the data when users navigate to a table or report? You certainly can. You have filters on every table. If you go to a table, right now I have filters that are not predefined, they're not pre-selected, but I could easily initialize a category filter so that instead of that, I could have one different or not. Once I select how I want to filter it, I can see the products based on just which category they belong to. So we have filters, which you can use and customize with formulas at the start, so you can start with filtered data or start with all data and allow users to filter it. If your database has a front end and back end, which do you point IronSpeed Designer to in order to build the application? If it has a front end, then that's probably where in Access, when I built front and back end applications, you put all your user logic and your forms and reports, and those things are not useful for IronSpeed Designer. IronSpeed Designer works with the data content of your database, so you would point it at the back end of an Access database. I can't say about others because I don't know how you would split it up, front end and back end, but that's the usual way, and that's the answer. Would this password be used for logging into the application? If so, is there a login page? We're going to get to that, Ralph. Thanks for the question. Yes, because this is now a complete application which your users could work with, except I wouldn't dare put it out there without having security on it and the ability to secure the pages I wanted. So we still have one step to do, which is to add security and then deploy our application. Can you easily use existing SQL tables to determine your user login database? Of course you can use existing SQL tables. You just create pages. You can have more than one database. So if you have a database where your users are in a separate database, you could add that to your application. We just go back into our application. We could run the application wizard again, go to our databases, and add a database. I don't have one to add here, but this is the idea. Once you add another database with a user name in it, then you can use that for login. So very easy to do. Can I design a table for multiple languages like English and French and link to the language selection when designing language in the application? That kind of dynamic selection isn't built in. If you can conceive of it in ASPX, you can customize your application. You're no worse off than if you were building the application from scratch. But what you're really looking for in IronSpeed Designer is the tremendous time advantage it gives you by having all of the predefined components that you can use without having to take all the time. You can have separate languages, and each And the application can be seen at runtime using fixed text from any of the languages you choose, but we don't have dynamic language selection. You'd have to program that. Can I enhance that filter drop-down window with my own custom constraints? You certainly can, because, as I said, the filters are all done in code behind, and you can go into the code behind and program whatever you need. You can even do it so that it's compatible with all of the ongoing development of IronSpeed. You can add code that's not disturbed by the code regeneration when rebuilding, so that you can add your own customizations. We have a whole code customization tutorial which will allow you to use the code customization paradigm that works with IronSpeed and allows you to have your own customizations compatible and preserved throughout your IronSpeed application. Can you use a different database, IBM DB2-400? We don't support that database. Any database that you have which you might want to use, actually the best way is to find a way to convert it to one of the databases we have. We've done that a number of times, and usually in databases you'll find the conversion software from one database to another is very good, so you can actually prepare a version. That leaves you with some other problems, but that's the only way to use one of the databases we don't have listed. Is Visual Studio required to run IronSpeed? Not at all. You can use a text editor to do editing, or you don't have to do editing. You can edit only in what you can see in IronSpeed. It's up to you. Visual Studio, if you're going to do code debugging and want to change some things in code, then Visual Studio will really be handy, and you'll want to have it. Can one modify the template of what gets generated? Yes, you can, Arnold. It's not something we support standard, but the parts are there, the code templates, and of course the CSS. If you mean what gets generated, that's one thing. If you mean what you see and how it's presented, then that's the CSS, and the CSS is very easy to customize. But it's all customizable. Some of the generation is built in internally and you can't change it, but there are templates for controlling a lot of it, and you can go into it and find that. With that, you can, if you have IronSpeed Designer installed or get it installed, you can look through the installation folder. Let's just go to my installation folder for IronSpeed Designer and go to my IronSpeed and go to where it's, so here's what you get installed, and there are design themes, extractor, templates, language, grammar, layout definition, layout templates. Here are some XSL that will give you some layout. And with that, but look through the templates and see how it's used. We don't support it, but anything you can get at, you can work with. Do I have to worry about JavaScript for interaction, or IronSpeed Designer handles all that? You don't have to worry about JavaScript. You can use it as much as you want, interface it to your application. IronSpeed Designer uses it, has its own suite of JavaScript that goes with your application. So when you get an application, you get your own JavaScript with it. In my testing, I have test 11.1. My app 5 contains application web UI JavaScript and web form JavaScript. So you can look at the JavaScript that's there and build your own too. How to link and access database having workgroup file and which permissions are required on access database tables to generate the application. I'll see if I can, from what you have an access database and you have are using a workgroup file for security in the access database. You will continue to use you can continue to use the same database secure or workgroup file on your server. You can access that. You will have to have it set so that the access uses the workgroup, and when you do, then you can use that for your application. Regarding to DB2DB, can we retrieve the data in DB2 via ADO.NET? We don't have a standard way to do that, and so we don't build a data access layer to other databases using ADO.NET. Now, that's a good question, Murat. You could conceivably build your own data access layer by looking at the data access layer we have. That's a major project, and you might lose a lot of the value of IronSpeed Designer by having to program so much. But certainly it is standard ASP.NET, and so that you can do anything you can program. Can ADO.NET code be embedded? You can embed code, other custom code in your application, no problem. And then using the code customization paradigm of IronSpeed, you can embed it so that it stays with you and use it in your IronSpeed application. You're getting pretty complicated here, and not what we usually set up users for, but if you need to do that and you still get the value you need out of IronSpeed, then by all means you're free to try it. How you can generate applications based on a database for Silverlight in Visual Studio. IronSpeed Designer does not do Silverlight, although you can customize any page to include Silverlight controls. I don't know what you mean by database for Silverlight. Well, you can use a database in your application, but again, as you go to Silverlight, if you go to Silverlight, that will just be an embedded control and will be basically transparent to IronSpeed Designer. Okay, well, you guys are really good on the questions. Let's go to our slides and do the last part. We've had this question about security, and remember I said we can't do anything to this without security, and so we're going to add security to our application, the last step. We're going to make it, then we're going to make it available so that you can see it too. Right now, we have on our website, let me just open up my browser. Let's go to a page, go to our website. This is ironspeed.com. And at ironspeed.com, I have a website called Crash Course, which is a crash course we do every Friday. And so on the Crash Course, there is a static page, just text, HTML, advertising the Crash Course. When we get through, we'll deploy our application that we're building here to this page so you can use it live over the internet. You'll see how easy it is to not only generate but then deploy your applications. So we're going to add security. Microsoft IronSpeed Designer supports 4 models of database security. It supports the database model, which we'll be using, where you have the login information in the database. It supports Active Directory, connecting to your Active Directory for internal applications, and it selects SharePoint groups for SharePoint applications and Windows authentication if you just want to know the name of who's logged in Windows. We're going to be selecting our database security, then select the pages that we want to secure. For our application, we'll just select a single page to demonstrate it, but you could secure your whole database the exact way you want, and we'll do that. And then we'll take a few more questions after we deploy it to the web server. Once our application is deployed, we'll go through some deployment steps. I'll show you exactly what it takes to deploy it to the web server, and we'll take some of the last sets of questions. Okay, let's go to our application, go to our tools, open the Security Wizard. The Security Wizard, go to the next step, past the introduction, select the database model, select which table we want, which is the sales rep table. You know that the sales rep table has the login information, password, and email address, which is good. These are all good, but for this demonstration, we're going to make the last name both the username and the password. last name. Where's my last name? Come on, I know it's, sorry, there it is. And the sales rep ID. Now the login page you'll get when you add security can contain a link to have the customer asked to have their security information emailed. You just have to have an email address in the customer information in the database. If you have that email address, you add it, then we'll get a link on our login page so the customer can ask to have their security information emailed. Now once you've selected what model you want to use, you have to select how to secure which pages to secure. As I said, we're going to require you to be signed in just for the Add Categories page. This will demonstrate it. If I select them all, then everybody will have to log in for every page. Once you're logged in, of course, you won't have to log in anymore, but we're just going to choose the Add Categories page. You notice we've selected what we want, but it still hasn't been set. The permission isn't set until we set it. Once we do, we can go next, see that we're ready to finish, and finish adding security. Now our application will have the security code built in. The page for adding a categories record will be secured and require you to log in. Everything else will still be open. I left it that way so you could try the application itself on the actual website when we put it there. And so let's take a look at that. We'll go to, now we've got our application. Let's run it again. You notice before we had our application, there's nothing, only here is the language selector. Now in our application, when it runs, we'll get a sign-in page. And you can sign in here, or you can try going to add a categories record. And if we add a categories record, it'll ask us to log in. You notice that the login page has a link so that you can ask to have, the customer can ask to have their password information emailed, provided the email information you have in your database is accurate. And one step we didn't do, we didn't configure our application to use the SMTP server, which you would also have to do, but that's easy to do. For this, we're going to log in as Mr. Fuller, who's one of our sales reps, and you can use that name or any other that you find in the sales rep table to log in when you try it. I don't want to save this. And now we get our Add Categories page. So our application is logically secure. I haven't configured it complete security, but that's okay. This is just a test application. Anyway, we're now ready to deploy it. So to deploy it, I want to go to my application, which is here. In my testing, this is the application. Whoops. My app 5 is the application I want. To use an application with IIS that uses uses an Access database, the Access database has to be internal to the application. So I'm going to copy the databases folder. This contains our database and another one. It contains both test databases. I'm going to take that application, that database folder, and paste it in here. Now it's internal to the application. I can go back to my IronSpeed Designer, go back to my web config file, look at the connection string. Here's the connection string for our Access database, and let's make this a local file where it's in the local DB folder. So now we're looking at the internal Access database. That's fine. Let's save the web config file. Then we have to go to our build menu, and where is our, not there, okay guys, sorry, tools, synchronize the database schema, because we want to make sure that the database schema we're looking at is the same one we had. So we'll synchronize it so that the internal application is using the database, and it is. that we now pointed to, which is the internal one, just a copy. So we're now using the internal database. We want to take that application. Here we go. And now that I put the folder in here, I'm going to take it out, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip this entire folder, and I'm going to, to do that, I don't want to include the database. I'll put it in over on my web server where I also have a copy. So right now I'll just delete this. We'll go out, and my app 5 is going to be zipped up to compress it so that it's easier to send. Now I would normally FTP this to my web server, but we're on an internal network here where I can get at my web server directly over the network, so I'm just going to copy this file. Once I have it, I've created an access or a zip file reflecting the entire contents of the application folder. I'll take that folder and I'll copy it. I'll go to my web server, which I'm already connected to here, in my sample applications folder, and paste it in here. And now we're copying the My App 5 folder, the entire application, into our web server. This is the same as FTPing it there. Once I get the zip file there, I'll just quickly extract all the files to recreate the folder, and then put the database file back in. Let's right-click and extract all. And we want to extract it right to the applications folder. So now we've got our folder here. Once our folder is on our web server, and we'll put the database back as soon as it finishes copying. Here's the same databases folder, which I'm just going to take and drop into there. So now the database folder is back inside my app 5. The application is ready to go. All we need to do is configure it for IIS. Actually, we need to do one other thing, which you'll see in a minute, because it won't run right away. We're going to go to our websites. In my IronSpeed corporate web server here, we have the crash course page. You remember that crash course page I showed you? We're going to reconfigure it so that the path it points to is not my app, which is the page itself, but it's going to point to our applications, which is in the My App 5 folder. And now, if we try and browse it, IIS will serve our application, and we'll have one small glitch, if this goes true to form, where it will show us our application, but we won't have access to the database, and that's because there isn't sufficient permissions set on the database folder for IIS to get a hold of it and to use it. So we can easily fix that with the permissions. And there's our cell. Look at this. It did it this time. I've never quite figured out how IIS figures out these permissions all the time exactly right, because usually it will tell me it has a permissions error and I have to reconfigure the permissions. But now we're looking at our crash course, and so there we are. There's our, and so now your application will be live. If you've got it in your browser, you can now see the live application instead of our crash course page. So let's just go back, and we're deployed. It's that easy. Let me go back to questions. When users log in, can they be limited to the pages and menu items that are relevant to them? They certainly can. We have, in addition to the login security, we have role-based security. So if you want to add roles tables, and you can experiment with roles-based security with this sample database, because it has roles assigned to the sales reps, and so you can use that also. And then they will see the things that are available to their role and not anything else. Can we, and how hard is it to integrate third-party add-ons like Telerik controls, Apache Cordova, phone guy? Okay, those are some I haven't heard of. Telerik people use all the time. You'll find plenty of users on our forum who use Telerik controls, and so can give you lots of details. But basically, you have to include the controls, and it's executable in your application. You have to have a license to do that from the controls provider, and then you can use those controls in your application. You will have to program that use, but it's just another control on your page. How to display a page or form based on specified schedule time. For example, I want to activate a form when the time for results is due. If you want to have your web page do things dynamically, you're going to have to figure out some way to control that with JavaScript or something, some customization on the server. I don't know of any way to do that. However, if you want to activate a form when the time for results is due, I can easily select it so that when I click on a link, it will select one of a number of different things based on where you are, what time it is, etc. You can program all that, but they're all customizations. There isn't any standard way in IronSpeed Designer to do that really easily. And I'll probably reinforce that again. We make it very easy for you to do anything you want with your application. But the real value of IronSpeed Designer is its ability to give you really good access to your data in a very short amount of time. You can get your application backlog out of the way, and if you don't have to have just exact UI specifications, then you can use IronSpeed Designer to do exactly what you need and really save you time and money. Is there a login page? You saw the login page that I showed you when we added security to our application. Can you assign a primary page to login? You can also reassign what page is used for login. That's available too. If you don't assign a login, can anyone bypass or go by going directly to the page? In any website, if a user knows a URL or can guess the URL of a page, they can go directly to that page. If you don't have that page secure, they bypass your security, so keep that in mind. Why you do not compile the entire web application to all DLL files and deploy them to the web server. Jim, you can do that. Instead of using the website, I use the website because this is a sample test application. It provides very easy changing, and you can move in new components or new parts, and you don't have to recompile the whole website. But if you want to use a web application that is precompiled, it's exactly what you're asking for. Is there a deployment wizard in ISD? There certainly is, Stephen. Let me just show you Internet ISD, and here let's select the page, and we have our deployment wizard, which is in, where is build or tools, in the deployment wizard, and we can select which manner of we can MSI installer, depends on the framework you're going to, publish to the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have time to go over it all, but yes, you can use the deployment wizard. And also, with all of this, there is a tremendous resource for online help, and we'll talk about that. Well, we'll talk about that right now. So this is, can you go over a security configuration example where the user ID and password are from Active Directory, but the access to the application is based on a table in the database? I can't go over it. We're already past time, and I don't want to hold up people for too long, but I'll tell you what to look at. We do that all the time. You base your security on Active Directory, and then you use role-based security based on tables in the database. You could do that here, and so you have Active Directory with role-based security based on the database. How to display database data based on colors in a form. I already defined a table with colors. I want to display these colors. Well, you would have to, how would you detect what color? Remember, your data, your server can't see, your form can't see. But that, again, is something you would customize. It's not something that IronSpeed Designer has the ability to do right out of the box. What are the steps to follow for if IIS can't figure out the access to the database? Very easy. What I would have done is if it hadn't found the access to the database, I'd go into my F5. This is where it's getting its application. I just go to the DB folder, which is the one I copied in, and reset the security on the folder. Set the security, and I just edit the security and add a user. If we make everyone a user, we can set permissions for everyone, which allow full control, and then anybody will be able to use it, including IIS. And so it's just that simple. We're done here. There. Say OK. And now everyone has access to the DB folder, and that includes IIS, so there wouldn't be any permission problem with using IIS. And so let me go back to my page, and I don't know if you looked at your crash course page, but with the old crash course page, if I refresh that page, we should immediately see our application, which is being served by my IIS on my web server. What are the steps you follow? That's it. Okay, let's get on. We're a little past our time, and we're right at the place we want to be. I want to talk about where you go from here, where you can learn more. You can learn more with training videos on our website, training courses on our website. We have one every Friday for crash course, which is very similar to this, except emphasized a little differently. And we have intermediate, advanced training, and you can sign up for our all training on the website. We have extensive online help, over 1,000 pages, and the online help page is very handy. You go to it. Let's go to online help. And the search box here is also handy because it allows you to search any of the contents of help, and also the technical forum content. You can join our technical forum, talk to other users, and get content of all the past discussions in the technical forum, and it's all searched by the search box in the online help. You can also get a technical support license along with a full license for IronSpeed Designer, which gives you complete access to the product. You can also get a technical support license. You don't have to, but you can, and then you get immediate access to our engineers for your particular problems. We also have a great group of MVPs you can access. They are not employees of IronSpeed. They're independent consultants, but you can contract with any of them to do IronSpeed work for you, and they're excellent in this subject. And we have sales reps that will try and help you to make sure that you get the help you need so you can do an IronSpeed Designer project, and they will sell you the licenses you need to do the work you need. And I have one more question. Was the IronSpeed website built with IronSpeed? The IronSpeed website grew up without IronSpeed to start, and since then it's not even, in many cases, it's not even an ASPX website. All the pages are ASPX pages, but basically it's HTML. And so we edit it. We don't need to do IronSpeed Designer. No, it is not an IronSpeed Designer website. Our internal database and our customer service database and things like that, our applications, those are all IronSpeed Designer applications because those things require the database backend. Our main website is not a database backend website, and so it doesn't require IronSpeed Designer. How I can design my own help and technical support on my own application? Mohammed, that's a great question. IronSpeed Designer doesn't provide those features out of the box, but if you have a I presume you would have help and technical support available in a database, and you would create the pages and stuff. IronSpeed Designer would be a great tool to do that and design the pages so that people could navigate it, and that'd be a great project. But it's not one we have done or one easy to do. Why did the IronSpeed discontinue the free version? We discontinued the free version because it was too easy to not buy IronSpeed Designer. Remember, if people don't buy IronSpeed Designer, you won't have the support you need, you won't have anything you need, and there won't be any continuing upgrade to meet the demands of new technology and all the rest that we provide. So we have to come to a balance between making it easy for you to do your web applications and getting enough revenue so that we can keep the business going and be there for you in the future. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do. And our sales reps are the front line where you can talk to them about how to do your IronSpeed Designer projects. And so I urge you to talk to them. And thanks very much for the question. And with that, I want to say thank you for attending the webinar today. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for the questions. They were great.